ZombieTech. Welcome to ZombieTech, a forum for engineers, scientists, and inventors to ponder on the technologies needed to survive the inevitable zombie apocalypse.
She's Addie.
He's Whisker.
And is that a voice disguiser running in the background, I hear?
Who's this you're talking to?
Garbled. I can't make you out. We have...
I'm speaking to you from beyond.
So one of our favorite jokers is back.
Dr. Cranquis.
Week. Yeah.
Yep.
And we're here to sort of celebrate a milestone.
Two, actually.
Two?
Yes.
Yeah.
The first is it's the second birthday of the Cranquis Tumblr blog, right? Well, a little past, but
A little
pretty
past,
close.
yeah.
Woohoo! And we also have a crazy 20,000th follower as well.
Yep.
Except now I think you're more than that.
Yeah, let's see what we hit today. 21,168. So
That's craziness.
yeah, I know. Where are all these people coming from, and don't they have anything better to do?
So for those people out there who haven't listened to the initial ZombieTech interview with Dr. Cranquis, and we really should come up with names for the two different types, because there's the first time somebody comes on the show and they have to go through, initiation, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then the really cool kids get to come back for a second go round.
It's true.
All right, so
Oh, I've arrived.
there's a distinction there. So for those of the listeners that haven't listened to the first episode, could you give
the
us
virgin episode?
Yes, yeah. So could you give them just a quick explanation of what your blog is?
Okay. Well, my blog is this thing that I write on the internet, and it collects words which allow people... Oh, how basic were you going for? Too basic? Let me kick it up a notch. I wrote a blog called Dr. Cranquis Mumble Gripes. That's been around for a couple of years now, and for some reason people find these random complaints and musings and reminiscences of my job working in an urgent care clinic to be interesting. And the majority of it is just me kind of complaining anonymously about patients. And I do it in a way which protects their identity too. And then the blog has kind of grown to also involve a lot of advice to medical students and pre-med students, as well as even some medical type of advice to people asking questions about their mysterious conditions.
Mm-hmm.
And so far, I haven't been able to actually diagnose anybody with acute zombie-itis, but I'm waiting for the day.
So it's been about 6 months since the last time we got to talk to you, and part of what we talked about last time was making sure that the patients remain anonymous and that you remain anonymous.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, there's, as our regular listeners will know from listening to the various doctors that we talk to, there are some issues, talking
About
anything.
Yep.
And you have to be careful to not get yourself in any trouble. Obviously, you've got to practice.
Mm-hmm.
So, it's been about 6 months and no problems with that?
Nope. Still going strong. Just, it really has made a big difference that from day one, I've hidden my identity as well as my patient's identity. So it makes it a lot easier to keep things covered. Nobody can figure out based on, well, we know that he practices in this area. So then these are the patients that might have come to that building and blah, blah, blah.
I should mention that before the show started, I tried to ask the pop versus soda question, ended up getting a completely different answer, but one that was inaccurate to most Southerners. I don't know.
Eddie's
We're working
still
on
trying
it.
To work it
I'm
out.
working on it.
And I believe that there's about 21,000 other people out there that are trying to work it out as well. So that's probably a bit of a hot seat to be sitting in.
Yeah,
The spotlight's on you, Dr. Cranquis.
Yeah, well, I think you have OCD problems there, Eddie, and we're going to find a way to email you some medicine or something.
Only if I can send a bill to you. Make sure that it gets to you.
Yeah. Okay. Well, stalemate then, I guess.
Win.
So 21,000 followers on a blog. In the terms of like blogging, I mean, most blogs, don't get that big, and when they do, it's they sort of change their direction a little bit when they get that popular. Has yours changed much in the last 6 months?
I don't believe it has, which has been one of the unstated goals in the beginning. I didn't go into this to get famous or get rich. I don't put any advertising on the blog, particularly for that reason, because this is just something I do for fun. People enjoy it, which is nice. But, I like to at least flatter myself that if, for some reason one day, 19,000 people woke up and went, you know what? Screw this guy, unfollow. Oh, well, I just keep writing because it is something I literally enjoy doing.
And at least you'll still have about 5,000 then.
Yeah, right. I never said I was good at the math, okay? But I think probably the only change that's come along in the blog, purely based on the number of followers that I can think of, is that I have continued to become more and more educated on the buttons and hot topics that one should avoid when writing about things. So, it started with pretty innocent, simple things that I didn't realize were considered, by some people as, you don't use that word anymore. Oh, okay, fine. But now it's even, it's reaching a point where with this many people following the blog, sometimes you write something which to a medical provider, to another medical practitioner, makes all the sense in the world. And yet, since now there's a very large proportion of people reading the blog who aren't even in the medical field at all, it can make them feel like I am being, very denigrating or insulting to a particular category of patient or person. So I've had to kind of readjust my viewpoint on things a little bit, and I've learned to not reply to those challenges in anger, and maybe take a little bit and think about things before I write a snarky reply. So
there is that facet of human culture where you get enough people paying any attention to any one thing, and
someone will be offended.
One of them is going to be, upset.
And it's not that I'm out there to not make people upset at all, but at the same time, my background, my personality is not particularly antagonistic. I mean, heck, look at this. I'm a guy who writes, passive-aggressive, writes a passive-aggressive blog, I smile at my patients all day and go, well, yes, that makes a lot of sense why you would have chosen to do that. And then I walk out of the room and go, you stupid, you're not right. I can't wait to blog about this.
Right.
So, yeah, I'm not out to stir up a lot of controversy.
I did remember reading some of those posts that you had replied to and thinking maybe Dr. Cranky needs a Dr. Cranky's Mumbled Grapes about Dr. Cranky's Mumbled Grapes blog, because sometimes just the things that people say, like, I mean, I'm a nurse, but at the same time, I think if I had not been a nurse, I would still understand your point of view, And so I'd be like, okay, it's not that big a deal, folks. Like, But, hands up. I, let them have their moment of offendedness, I suppose. So last time, I think I asked a bajillion questions, but this particular question never got answered because I think I asked like 3 at the same time. Okay. So, in the classic Addie style. So a day in the life of an urgent care physician. From the time you get out of your car to the time you get back into your car.
Okay. So, first of all, you assume I arrive by car, but we'll just leave it at that.
I know I could have said, I was thinking of bus, bike, or walking. But
come on, what about limo?
Or limo, because we all know urgent care physicians roll in their bling.
Regular doctors drive Lamborghinis. Urgent care doctors have somebody drive their Lamborghini for them.
Oh, I see. So everybody become an urgent care physician. Got it. No. That's nice bribery.
I was totally picturing unicycle.
You.
So, Yeah, daily life of an urgent care doc. Most urgent cares are open limited hours compared to emergency rooms. For those of you listening from out of the U.S., I really don't know where else urgent cares are in the world, so I'll just kind of give you a quick summary. But an urgent care is a clinic or hospital area that is designed to handle issues that are urgent but not emergent. So things that back 10 to 15 years ago, when you could actually get in to see your doctor the same day that you had a problem,
Mhm.
instead of waiting for a month for the next available appointment, you
Mhm.
would have seen your primary doctor for most of this stuff. Now urgent care kind of picks that up. So we're this buffer between emergency room and primary care.
Mm-hmm.
There's pros to it and there's cons to it, and I actually have a question in my inbox that I'm going to be replying to sometime soon about what I think, how much of an effect I think it has on our healthcare system here in the U.S. But
Sure.
we won't go into that right now. So most urgent care is being open only limited hours. Then the job is a little bit more like a shift work job.
Mm-hmm.
You come in, you show up whatever amount of time you think you need to get prepared ahead of your shift, and then you're there. Patients start checking in, and most urgent cares and clinics that just take patients for same-day appointments aren't going to really set up appointments per se, but they'll just come in and see a doctor. So people line up and just sign in. It's first come, first serve, and you just start going. And as as the list on the computer gets longer, or as you hear a printer going off somewhere, you know how busy you're going to be.
Right.
Your day can vary widely. You can have days where, there's a big sporting event in town and nobody wants to come in until the sporting event's over. So you sit around for 4 hours and don't do anything. And then everybody realizes that they've actually been having a lot of pain and suffering all through the game. And so they come in right afterward. You have days where everybody comes rushing in the first 3 hours, and then a storm comes through and nobody shows up.
Mm.
You have, there's no predictability to it, which is kind of the fun of it also, because it's something different every day.
Right.
It's one of the main reasons I chose urgent care, because I just really did not want to be dealing with chronic issues every day, or doing, school physicals and well child exams every day. So the typical day, I'm in, I work my shift, I eat when I can, I chart when I can, and then at the end of the day, I clean up whatever dictations and charting I have left to do, and I go home.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't take a pager with me. Nobody cares where I go once I leave. Nobody's going to call me in the middle of the night.
Mm-hmm.
My time is my own when I'm outside of the hospital, which is the other big reason that I'm doing this job.
Right. So
a city that's large enough to warrant having an urgent care facility that has a sports stadium and is not in a desert because the storms roll through.
Oh, you're good.
Yeah, you are. It's too bad at least one of those things I said in there doesn't apply to me.
Dang it. You are tricky. So you were saying how part of the reason you went to urgent care was because you like the unpredictability. Being an ER physician is also quite unpredictable. So how did you end up making the decision between urgent care and, say, emergency medicine?
I didn't want the critical nature of ER.
Okay.
Most emergency rooms, every emergency room has to be expected to handle death warmed over rolling in on a gurney.
Mm.
Massive trauma of whatever kind. You
Mm-hmm.
might be able to transfer it to a higher level of service of a bigger emergency room if you're a tiny little rural place somewhere, but you got to at least know how to handle the basics until help arrives.
Mm-hmm.
I did not want that level of responsibility.
Sure.
And so that's part of what made my decision. But then also part of what made the decision is that I really didn't even know about the idea of urgent care until I'd already gotten into my family medicine training.
I
So
see.
I hadn't even really considered going into anything like urgent care because the emergency room was just too much for me. So I thought, well, I'll do primary care. I'll do family medicine. Then I found out about it while I was in my residency. I was like, hey, this is kind of cool. You know what? I might have even enjoyed going into ER if I'd had the good enough training for it. But now that I'm in family medicine, I guess the closest I can come to that is urgent care.
Mm-hmm.
So let's try that. And hey, it's a good fit for me.
Cool. Very cool. And I think recently you've mentioned on your blog that you've gotten a physician assistant. as an intern guy, or I don't know.
Oh, as a student.
Okay,
Yeah,
yeah.
it's a physician assistant student who came by to rotate with us for a little while.
And how'd that
Yeah.
go? Or is it still going? Or
No, that one's done. And actually, I'm hoping we'll get some more. We've got now finally starting to get a couple different programs in the area that are interested in having students rotating with us, which I'm just so excited about. So, yeah, no, that went really well with him, and we had a good time, and I could just, it made me excited about teaching all over again.
what
So,
did you notice? Like, well, I'm trying to think. Like, did you ever get frustrated because he was a student and didn't like some things didn't come naturally to him, or were you totally in the he's like this budding young student of unlimited potential?
no, I'm realistic about that kind of stuff. Yeah, there were definitely things that needed work. It was actually his very first clinical rotation as a PhD
Oh
student.
wow, okay.
He was fresh from classroom work and hadn't done any really physical exam stuff for like 6 or 8 months even. So yeah, there was a lot of learning going on. But that's part of the excitement. I kind of liked that because I could mold him to however I wanted him.
Right. You could be as anal as you wanted to, but you could also be as encouraging as you wanted to.
Yeah.
Fair
So it was a very enjoyable experience, and I look forward to doing more of it. I had a lot of feedback from pre-meds and healthcare students on Tumblr saying, "Oh, we wish we could rotate with you." And trust me, you guys, if I had the opportunity, I would just set up a clinic somewhere and just take all the students that could come, and we would just have a grand old time together.
That'd be awesome.
That would be awesome.
Now, my question
So
also
what you're
is
saying is your plan is to experiment on sick people and have a lot of fun with a bunch of students. Mm.
Well, like all respectable teaching institutions everywhere.
I see.
true. That's a very good point. Especially being that it's the month of July now. I think the new interns are.
Yes, they started 2 days ago.
Do you get interns in your location too? No.
Not in my particular building because we're in an outpatient building. We don't really have a lot of interns or anything.
Gotcha.
But like hospitals will get that. Teaching hospitals are just getting flooded.
Oh, that means my hospital's probably
Yeah,
experiencing
if
some
they have
bad
any affiliation
mojo.
with any kind of residency program, they're going to have people coming through there.
Oh man. So these are the students. The interns are students who are out of is it residency or no?
So an intern in the U.S. terminology is anyone doing their first year of residency training after completing their 4-year medical school degree.
Oh, so they're like going from the books and a little bit of clinical.
They've had 2 years of clinical work in the standard U.S. 4-year med school. You're going to have your last 2 years are all clinical.
Okay.
So they've had clinical experience. Now, going into the internship, part of the reason that it can be such a crapshoot as to whether you get a good intern or not when you're dealing with them in a teaching hospital is that it's not just their experience, but it's what they are doing the internship for. Some of them are doing internship as part of a big program. Internship is just part of their 4-year internal medicine residency.
Mm-hmm.
Other people, though, are just doing a 1-year internship in internal medicine or general surgery because then they're going to go on and subspecialize in something else. And the psychology you'll see taking place there is, well, I'm just doing this for a year because I'm supposed to do it.
So I don't have to be good at
90% of
it.
this information I'm not going to use in my specialty, so why should I really try? And that's where the real...
That sucks.
Yeah, that's where the real losers really rise to the top of the scum pond because they have just as much responsibility as anybody else, but they don't really care.
Yeah.
And so you can run into some real tough cookies there.
So then does their intending like whip them a few notches down?
Try? Sure, they try, but it would take pretty egregious violations before you would actually like hold an intern back or kick them out of a program. I've seen it happen, but it's literally along the lines of schlepping one of the nurses in the call room while you're on shift, which, contrary to what Grey's Anatomy shows you, that's not really smiled upon.
Yeah.
So
yeah. And I mean, I would think to a certain degree the nurses would also try to whip them into shape because we have to suffer all of the bad decisions that the doctors make.
Absolutely. So the nurses will definitely be one of the first lines of speaking up. And the medical students can be also, although the medical students, since they're technically lower on the totem pole, have to be very careful how they go about it. But
what does it matter if a medical student like talks back to an intern, like an idiot intern? Like what's going to happen to the medical student?
Well, it all depends on how devious of an intern you're dealing with.
I guess that's true.
If the intern just could care less, he's not going to care. He's just going to ignore you and move on with his life. But if he's set at you, he can assign you the worst assignments to, the worst admissions in the hospital. He can make you stay a lot later on work days or on post-call days. I mean, there's rules, but he can stretch it to the max.
Sure.
He can get the ear of the attending and start twisting your activities to make it seem as if you're trying to shirk your duties when it's really
him shirking his.
That his shirking his.
Right.
And I've seen it happen where med students spoke up maybe a little too soon about a resident that wasn't doing their part, and they ended up getting chewed out by attendings as if they were the ones who've been the ones doing something wrong. So,
wow.
It's a tough political minefield.
It really is. It really is. At the end of the day, it's all about the patients and whether or not the patients get good care. But I guess egos.
We're all human.
Yeah.
Emotions rise up, and you're under stress. Nobody's sleeping well. Nobody's eating well.
Right.
And it's just it can be bad.
Right.
So we interviewed a guy, another blogger.
He knows him.
A couple weeks ago.
Tom of Medical State.
For people who haven't heard that episode, he's a Canadian medical student. He's doing his clinical rotation.
He's in his third
out
year
in
now, I think.
The boondocks somewhere up there.
Yeah.
And he didn't seem like much of a drama queen to me. Is that is it just like the doctors down here are more dramatic, or?
Well, he's also a medical student. Give him time. No, I'm just kidding, Tom. I'm just kidding. But no, I mean, he is a med student. He's at the bottom of the heap.
Mm-hmm.
There is very little room for a drama queen medical student to survive, because everybody's above you, and you act up a little bit and you get squashed.
Right.
Once you get into residency, you have a little bit more leeway, and the higher you go up, the higher you climb up the dunghill, the more crap you can roll down on other people.
Yeah. I guess part of it also is that right now, because he's a student, he can be like, "Oh, I'm a medical student.
I don't know.
I don't know."
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And people are willing to foster it a bit.
That'll carry you a little ways. Your own self-respect will keep you from doing that too often.
Mm-hmm.
But it is a useful thing to fall back on sometimes. You know what? I'm sorry, I don't have the experience. I don't know what's going on with this patient.
Right.
And I think a med student who can just say that without pretending they know the answer or lying is actually going to go further, because they're going to have that weight on their conscience going, man, I didn't know that. I should have known that. I'm going to learn it, and now I will never forget it.
Sure. And quick question, just to back up to your physician assistant student that you had. Did you prepare him for the zombie apocalypse?
I can't say I did enough for the zombie apocalypse.
Oh, man.
We talked about some basic biological precautions, like washing hands and not putting your fingers in the patient's mouth if they're slavering.
Oh, yeah.
No, there wasn't enough preparation there. Yeah, he's screwed.
Oh, man. Sorry, dude. Better luck next time.
Zombies have been in the news quite a bit the last couple months, actually.
Oh, my gosh. Yeah. Have you seen all that?
We haven't really brought it up on the show much, but some of it's pretty interesting.
Yeah, I think there is a little bit of I don't forget which term of bias it is, but there's a little bit of, I want to say, reporting bias.
Yeah, obviously.
Yeah.
Everybody's getting all excited now about, somebody else killed someone and ate their skin, so they must be a zombie. But
yeah, the reporters are looking very, very hard to find things that they can sort of recast as a zombie headline.
Well, there are a lot of people that are starting to bite. Either they're starting to bite people.
Eddie's a really bad source for information on these topics. Because she wants the zombie apocalypse.
Okay, wait. Whisker, I am... Okay. There's either a lot of people starting to bite other people, or people have been biting people all along and they're just now coming to light.
I see.
You see?
I think it's the second. I think it's people have been biting and chewing and, even in a fit of mental illness or rage, gnawing off parts.
Right.
For centuries. I mean, the teeth are one of our best weapons, People have been doing it. It's just now with the increase of interest in zombies, plus the increase in, the ease of spreading information around.
Yep.
It makes the news.
And I think I mentioned this, I don't know, last week or 2 weeks ago, but did you see the joke article that was spread around of a virus having caused that zombie apocalypse or that guy to chew the other dude's face off?
Yes, I saw
it was on Tumblr
debunking it, but I didn't see the original joke.
Oh yeah, I first saw it on Tumblr. I was like, whoa, LQP 79, yeah, zombie apocalypse. And then it got debunked, and I was like, no.
You can tell Addie's well prepared because she's cheering for it. She's not even a little bit worried. She's like, bring on the zombies.
Kill them all.
Well, that's because I know we have a plan in place.
So I've got a question, considering that we have a doctor,
on the show.
Doctor. We can actually ask this question. A lot of people have been wondering about this. What did they say it was? Bath salts that they keep bringing up, and it keeps getting disproven. But I want to know,
he was just on pot.
Do you know anything about
bath salts
thing, this topic, bath salts?
A tiny bit. All I know is basically a summary article I read in a journal a couple of months back where they were mentioning that there are cases of altered mental status, I want to say hyperthermia, and acute renal failure that appear to have been attributed to ingestion or use of bath salts. And so that it was just kind of on the list of things to consider when you're suspecting some kind of drug use in patients coming to an emergency room. I don't know the mechanism, and I haven't heard anything about stuff being disproven on it, but I have heard it mentioned a couple different times from reliable medical sources that it is something that can cause problems. I don't know much more about it than that.
So wait, these are bath salts, like that's the street name for the drug, not like actual bath salts?
These are actual bath salts.
Oh, Jesus.
Yes. These are, what is a bath salt? A bath salt is just a chemical that if you put it in water, it's going to make your skin soft and might make the water fizz or change color. So what people started finding out is that certain types of them, apparently, I don't know what it is, if you smoke it, if you chew it, if you drink it, what it is,
gross,
you get a buzz. Well, for centuries, people have been putting things in their body because they heard you'll get a buzz.
Right.
Apparently, it doesn't take too much of it ingested in a certain fashion. I don't know which method it is, but that it can start affecting the kidneys and then lead to other kind of problems. So
that doesn't surprise me.
I'd just like to start a rumor right now that it's a suppository. Just putting that out there.
DRE.
Don't put bath salts in your butt, kids.
That works. Brought to you by your public.
In the tub, Doc. Honest.
Brought to you by your public service announcers or something. That's horrible.
I can't wait to see the public service commercials. Oh my.
So yeah, the other one that came up was there was a guy who decided to cut out his intestines and throw them at the police that were trying to unbarricade him from his home.
Yep.
That was interesting. I mean, obviously.
Quite.
Maybe a little too gutsy.
Oh, gross.
So, the fact that that's even possible is just absolutely amazing.
And he was tased 4 times before he was brought down.
Rageaholic.
Yeah.
I mean, what kind of mental state do you need to be in to actually be able to injure yourself that badly? But still have enough cognitive ability to do something like specifically throw it at a police officer. I mean, that's pretty epic. I mean, the balance
as opposed to sling it over your shoulder and carry it around like a fur coat.
If you got to the point where you'd actually cut out your intestines, you're probably going into shock and you'd probably just like drop him on the floor or mumble something or whatever. But this dude has actually got enough of his brain still
Ammunition!
working that he's throwing it at the police. I mean, really, the human body is capable of amazing things.
Yeah, you get enough adrenaline running, and you'll ignore pain, you'll ignore common sense, you'll ignore the fact that you're holding your small intestine in your hands, and you'll just keep right on going.
What is this coil? I don't know. Do you know? Here, let me hand it to you. Maybe he was just trying to get a second opinion.
He's trying to make friends.
Get the snake off me.
Bath salts. That's crazy. Raspberry bath salts. Now, in
Yeah, Bed Bath &
visceral
Beyond
form.
has got a big run going right now.
Gross.
2-for-1.
So, question in continuing. Okay, I gotta focus. If you were an interviewer, and this came to me in my sleep, if you were an interviewer for a medical school, what questions would you ask?
Ooh. I've had people ask me sometime, what kind of questions have you had in interviews? But I don't think anybody's ever posed the question to me as the interviewer. I did get to do some interviewing as a resident. We would interview interns applying for our program.
Mm-hmm.
And I got to admit, most of my questions were pretty boring and standard, but that was also because we didn't have a lot of time. So you just had to try to get as good of a feel for the person, make sure that they had some idea as to what they were talking about. In a perfect Cranquis world,
Mm-hmm.
if I was, accepting applications to Cranquis University, man, it would be a long process, and there would be more than just questions going on. I mean, there's the obstacle course. There's at least 2 or 3 cooperative rounds of Left 4 Dead or Dead Island.
Excellent.
See how their basic prioritizing and life survival skills are going.
Excellent.
Yeah, it'd be a pretty rigorous thing. So I guess question wise, a lot of the standard questions you'll hear out there are just stupid. And I think you'll see these question lists about the most commonly asked questions. Everybody asks you what your greatest strength is, or what your biggest weakness is, or why did you decide you wanted to go into medical school? But you know what? If you didn't already get that answer across to them in your statement and in your curriculum vitae, then you're not doing a good enough job in your writing.
Mm-hmm.
But if I was going to make up the questions, and I had free leeway to write whatever question I wanted to, I guess at least one question would just be one of those really jerky little stress-inducing, mind-twisting questions that would just totally blow their minds and put them ill at ease for the next 20 minutes. So I can see how they work under stress.
You're one of those.
Well, I have heard from other students who had questions like that come up. I actually have a friend of mine who was at a residency interview and said that the attending that was interviewing him welcomed him into the office, sat him down, and said, "Okay, so we're going to start the interview, and in about 10 minutes, I'm going to ask you to pick one word to use to describe everything about yourself to me. But first, here's 5 other questions."
Oh, punk.
Yeah. Basically forcing him to multitask.
Yeah.
And the idea is good. Because if you've got limited time with somebody, at this point, you don't even really care what school they went to and what kind of grades they got. What you're wanting to see is more, are they going to be able to handle the stress? Are they going to be able to think creatively? So, the wackier questions are the better ones sometimes.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And to do that job, once they're up in the position where it's, they don't have anybody to drop in and help them, that's one of the absolutely most important skills to have, is the ability to
stay calm under pressure,
be able to think and do something else and think about something else, because you're got somebody else's life in your hands, and if you miss the smallest little thing, it can end very badly.
Mm-hmm. 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 And it's funny, actually, because I had my first code situation, I want to say a few months ago. And, we were like chickens with our heads cut off. I mean, we were doing CPR, we had oxygen on them. They were still not responsive. It was like PEA. The code cart was there, but, nothing, we couldn't do anything about it, right?
Yeah.
So the code team came within like what must have been like a minute or two. And we are like, what's happening? Like, what's going on? What happened to the patient in the background? Like, how did the person get to this point? Et cetera, et cetera. And the code team leader's like, well, everybody, it looks like we have PEA on the screen. Please continue to do compressions. Please increase the rate. Continue to do those breaths. Good job. And she was just like an orchestra conductor, and the entire room just calmed down.
Yeah.
And it was just like, I mean, the guy was out, and he came back, but
wow, good.
But it was just kind of like, oh my gosh, oh, this is like a day in the meadows. We just happened to be doing CPR. So that was.
Remind me never to go for a walk in a meadow with you.
I kind of want that lady on my zombie apocalypse team.
She was very impressive. I mean,
holding a gun.
I should have told her after the fact how impressed I was with how she led that code, because it makes so much of a difference, like, to have the leader be calm under like pressure and such. Yep. So
it really does. I've been in both types of code situations. Ones where, chicken with a head cut off and nobody knows what's going on, and the ones where, it's handled like the medical emergency it is. Okay, there's things we can do here. We're going to do our best, and don't everybody freak out.
Right.
Huge difference.
Right. Because if the top person who's supposed to know what's going on loses their head, well, everybody else is like, well, crap. If he doesn't know what to do, I don't know what to do either. Shock asystole. Which, for those who don't know, you don't shock asystole. It's not going to do a darn thing.
Unless you're on TV.
Right. In which case.
Everything.
Right. You shock a broken thumb.
I just had an idea.
Yeah. What's up?
For the greatest TV show ever. It's called Shock Hospital.
Oh.
And you come in, and no matter what you have, you get shocked.
Isn't that how psychiatric hospitals used to work?
Yeah.
Yeah, kind of. But this
going back to roots here.
I'm talking about terminology here. We're doing that stuff, baby.
Shock the ward off.
That's right.
What didn't work for psychiatry can definitely work for general medicine.
Gross. This just reminds me of excising cysts. Gross.
Yeah. You could shock that and.
Oof. Oh Lord! Then you've got electrified.
Oh my God! Oh.
I bet that would smell amazing.
Oh Lord!
And yet, if it was on YouTube, everyone in the hospital would watch.
Oh, absolutely!
Right? Isn't that the crazy? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
We spent a good hour watching YouTube videos of that on our unit this one time, and we were like so fascinated but so grossed out at the same time.
Those of you who don't have a medical professional in your life, they are masochistic.
Yep. Next time your healthcare spouse comes home, ask them if they ever just talk or watch the grossest things.
Yes, it's the best.
They say no, fine.
Yeah, we've learned since not to talk too much about our experiences and what we've seen. So, let's see. We have our audience is usually engineers, a lot of DIYers, electronic hobbyists and such. So actually getting medical professionals is kind of a treat. But
I've been noticing our audience is going a little more general with with each show, yeah. Because I've had people, ask me about, building guitars and stuff like that, and general zombie stuff is always fun too.
Right. But my question is, for those who, for our engineer listeners who want to move on past cysts, do you have any suggestions as a doctor and as part of this big old clinic for things that they can create or enhance or make better?
Ooh, absolutely. Absolutely, I do. In fact, I've had this story or short novel idea floating in the back of my mind for years, ever since residency, about the perfect hospital. And just all the technical advancements that I think could make it work so much better. And I'm not even just talking about medical technology. just simple things about ergonomics and layout and, the functional layout for a patient's room. So yeah, I think there's so much room for engineers who have a little bit of background in also being a patient or being, or just spending time in a hospital
Mm-hmm.
to just turn so much on its head and make it so much better. You know, boy, where to even start?
So
I
keep
think
eating all that pizza, engineers. He wants you to spend time in the hospital and then help him.
that's right. You need to get admitted at least once. No, may you all be healthy. But I mean, I remember one of the first things coming to mind as an intern was there are not enough chairs for us to sit on when we're walking up and down these hallways and standing outside of all these patients' rooms. I think hospitals need to have chairs that fold up into the walls.
Sure. That's a good
Pop
idea.
them out,
Yeah.
and you can sit on them, and then they disappear.
Yeah. That's a good idea, actually.
Because your feet hurt so bad at the end of the day.
Right.
Boy, I'd have to think a lot more about some of the other specific ideas, but I know I've had them. There is definitely a need for engineers and techies within the healthcare world. That being said, the place that right now engineers and techies rule is in the electronic medical records world, and I think there's been how do I put this politely? There's been maybe not enough medical input to a lot of the electronic medical records that have been created out there and the computer systems to back them up.
Yep.
So you can taste the Cheetos on the EMR, and I think that's still considered a compliment, right? But yeah, I think there needs to be a little bit more integration of doctors who are actively in practice and not just doctors who hired themselves out to some computer company without really having a lot of a lot of patient experience themselves in designing EMR.
Sure. And ours, I know, we have a lot of input into ours, but it's still slow as monkey chunks. And, usually you're like, why did they put this here? Why did they add this here? This button does nothing, like.
Oh, yeah.
So, yeah. You should come, I think, to Mayo. I'd be very interested in getting a Dr. Cranquis assessment of the Mayo layout.
I would be fascinated to do that. I've heard about it all my life. I would love to see it.
You have an open invitation here at the Toy Maker household.
If he doesn't already work there.
Oh! Oh!
Dun, dun, dun.
I wonder, actually, I don't know if we have urgent care clinics around here, though. You know what? That would weird me out if you were, like, our neighbor or something. I think that would legitimately weird me out. I might be like,
having a guy who has sincerely thought about how the Hippocratic Oath applies to sexual intercourse with
Isn't that
zombies
just the funniest?
is not a guy I want as my neighbor.
Well, I mean, it's good because, he knows it, right? And then so you won't have, like, a weirdo neighbor who's like, she's still my wife.
Weirdo at all.
Yeah. Right? So, just saying.
When the movie's made of my life eventually, who knows what kind of twist there might be at the end there, Addie? No, I was in the basement all along.
Creepy. So, actually, in our unit, I'm on a cardiovascular surgery unit, and we are piloting, I believe, wireless ECGs.
That's a terrible idea.
Isn't that amazing? Because I always tell my patients that they would win the Nobel Peace Prize if they managed to find wires that didn't tangle. Right? Am I right? Yeah. It's so bad. Because we have chest tubes, we have neck lines, we have, like, IV lines all over the freaking place. And then we have the freaking 5-lead ECGs.
But as somebody who's familiar with how wireless technology actually kind of works and sometimes doesn't, and electromagnetic interference. I mean, you're a hand,
Figure it
Addie.
out.
You know how
Figure it out.
difficult radio signals can be at times.
Okay, now what I want to know though, Addie, what do you mean by wireless EKG? Is in there's no lead stuck to their
None.
body?
None. Well, no. It's I think there's like it's like this one little it looks like a pager, like a tiny little pager,
Mhm.
and they just stick it over like near their clavicle, their left clavicle there.
Really?
Yeah. And it like has the rate, it can transfer like ECG information or something crazy like that.
Hallelujah.
Holla freaking Luya is right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're one step closer to a handheld medical scanner, boys.
Oh, it's gonna be great. And actually, it's interesting because a lot of people in the community like have been looking at these competitions that I don't know, some corporation put
The
out.
X Prize.
Yeah, and it says
For the handheld
essentially
medical scanner.
it's highly what's the word?
We know
Improbable.
a lot of the sort of people who are interested in working on one.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So, and let me back up because I'm just rambling right now. There's a competition to make essentially a tricorder where given some information, this tricorder is supposedly able to accurately diagnose like 40 different illnesses or something like that. But it's supposed to be somewhat handheld or portable at least. And I think the prize is like what? Some measly $10,000.
And
Or like-
massive amounts of nerd fame.
Yeah. Yeah. But then they would get the rights, I think, to your product.
Oh.
Which means billions of dollars, for them.
Yes.
But I don't know. So I mean, I've had some engineers come to me and they're like, "Yeah, we could totally do it." And I'm like, you don't think so?
So with this wireless stuff, obviously the test there is going sensor information and being sent to the nurse's station or something like that, and you can monitor it from there.
Sure.
What happens when they start to think about applying the opposite, like being able to push so much of this or that from the station? You don't even have to go in there.
What
I
do
know
you
they've
mean?
got their little buttons where they can control it sometimes, but what if you could control, like, you see that there's a problem and you know that, say, giving them a little potassium would make it all better. You don't even have to go in there to wake them up. You can just hit a button.
Well, I don't know about that because then every patient would have to have access to every different medication.
Yeah, that's the tricky bit.
I mean, you can't like stuff a tube down someone's mouth and be like, "Okay, here's a central repository of."
And you can't trust them patients. I mean, you just give them
Sometimes you
like a
can't.
absolute like cabinet full of drugs carrying around on their belt.
Yeah, that's not gonna work.
Well, I don't know. I'm picturing something along the lines of like it. If you go through the drive-through at the bank and they got those neat little vacuum air tubes. You know, you just
Everybody
have
has a little tube next to them.
Everybody's got this little tube and it all runs down to the central pharmacy downstairs.
Yeah, I don't know. I
Let's
could
just
see a
say
lot
that
of
there are-
medication errors.
There are days when the idea of being able to interact with my patients through a set of tubes and buttons just sounds awesome.
So maybe there is some merit to my idea.
There will be a
Maybe.
market for it somewhere.
All right, so last time we did this, we sort of turned the cranky hose on our own email account and let people submit some questions, and if I'm not mistaken, we didn't learn our lesson.
No, but that's okay. I like their questions. They had some interesting ones, and this time is no different. So if it's okay with you, we can go into the questions that your fans have for you.
Let's do it.
Awesome. So what medical supplies, and this is from with what we have, what medical supplies should I keep on hand in case of a zombie apocalypse?
Medical supplies. Well, it kind of depends on which version of the zombie apocalypse you live in. That's still up for debate.
Yeah, if it's airborne, that's a whole nother monster.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Let's just assume it has to be, you have to be bitten.
Okay.
There's a lot of that going around.
Right.
Yeah. So, you're gonna want bandages that don't look like bandages, because if you do get bitten, you want to be able to camouflage the bite so that people don't realize you've been bitten, and gives you a chance to at least, survive in that pseudo zombie state for a while before your priorities all shift to brains.
Interesting. Okay.
So
Okay.
Dr. Cranky is the problem.
I see.
Yeah. Also, you're welcome to carry, painkillers that might help take the sting off for a while until pain doesn't really bother you anymore.
Yep. Yep.
And don't waste your time with the antibiotics, because almost by definition, whatever the infectious item is that's going to transmit this, whether it's bacterial, viral, bacteriophage, whatever, you're screwed.
Or bath salts.
Yeah, well,
Right.
now the bath salts might at least, turn into some form of currency in a post-apocalyptic scenario. So,
Whoa,
yeah,
really?
well, sure, why not? I mean, you've got these items; they look cool. I mean, think about every sci-fi movie you've ever seen. They always have some kind of weird-looking, glittery little device or item that's the currency, right? Nobody just has paper anymore.
Right. That's
It's all
true.
bath salts in the future.
I see. That's very interesting. We'll have to work with that hypothesis.
But, if it's really bath salts and they're using it the way we think they're using it, then yeah, you really don't want to handle the money.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awkward.
A little bit of a hygiene issue there.
Okay, so Green Bandana 422 asks, have you ever had someone get mad and attack you on the job because of what you told them?
Attack me verbally, yeah. I've never had anybody hit me, but I've had 2 patients that I've left the room or called for help because I was worried they were going to.
Oh.
Those 2 actually were in residency. One was on a psychiatry rotation. Everybody has that happen sooner or later.
Sure.
Another one was on an inpatient rotation, an internal medicine service, and the guy was had mental issues and then had gotten dehydrated, got admitted by his family. He didn't want to be in the hospital because he was paranoid about doctors.
Mm-hmm.
And so we were trying to talk to his family outside of the room as we're admitting him, and he just launched himself out of the room, came charging down the hall at us, and knocked his dad over.
Oh my
just,
gosh.
charging up and down the hallways, and the nurses hit the button. And so the rest of us just kind of stood back. We're like, okay, well, he's not doing anything to anybody else. He's just running up and down the halls going, I want to get out of here.
Yeah.
So we're just standing there kind of watching him, and security comes around the corner, and talk about a weight mismatch, man. Security's 300 pounds, an African-American badass, and this guy's like 110 pounds of little scrawny Hispanic, and the guy took him at the knees from behind. It was the most beautiful thing I've ever had the privilege to witness. Oh, bam! And he disappeared into the squad car and was taken away somewhere else happy. So.
Wow.
But no, nobody's ever attacked me physically. But I've had people tell me, call me names because I wasn't going to give them their pain medicine, or,
sure.
Yell at me because they felt that they had to have antibiotics for their, cough for the past 2 hours.
Mm-hmm.
Things that the kind of just, grumpy people you run into in any field. A lot of the drama happens more in like the big ERs and in the psychiatric wards. You don't get as much of that in an urgent care environment.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay. So this next question I'm a little hesitant to ask because it has to do with the Patient Protection and Affordable Care Act.
Okay.
But maybe if we can keep to one sentence for the answer.
How many curse words can you use?
So this is actually Tom from Medical State who asks, and he has 2 questions. Given the recent ruling of the PPACA, how do you feel it will affect yourself, your patients, and healthcare in the long term, assuming the tax incentive passes in Congress as well?
So let me translate that out of Canadian. The question is neener, neener, neener.
Right. Right.
Damn you, Tom. Personally, it's not going to affect me very much if I stay in my current job. I'm still going to get paid by the hour by my um, employer.
Mm-hmm.
Who it's going to affect are the patients who are going to be trying to get in with their primary care doctors, and whose primary care doctors are going to be even more overloaded than usual because now there's going to be more patients who have insurance,
Mm-hmm.
but not an increase in doctors to take that insurance.
Okay.
Not for years, because primary care doctors are not there. They're not showing up.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a whole bunch of reasons for that, which I've gone into in a blog post on it a few days ago, and kind of a reblog of other stuff I've written about this before. But the primary care is not there. The increase in number of patients coming in to want to establish their primary care is going to go up.
Mm-hmm.
The number of doctors who are going to even want to take that, single payer insurance, if that eventually passes,
Mm-hmm.
is going to drop, because just based on prior experience, the reimbursement from a state or federal insurance program for doctor services is pennies on the dollar compared to what it's costing them just to run the clinic.
Sure.
So there's going to be more patients who want to use their insurance and fewer doctors who are going to be available to accept it or want to accept it. That's going to mean more patients coming to the urgent care. So it'll get busier for me to a point, but there's only a certain number of people we can see as it is. I mean, no matter how fast I go, I'm never going to be able to see a patient
everybody. Yeah.
in under 10 seconds.
Right.
So it'll affect me a little bit. It'll affect patients a lot more.
Yeah.
And it's not going to solve a lot of problems.
Yep. Okay. All right. And we'll keep it at that so as not to start a holy flame war with anybody from any side. Yep. Okay. I accept.
Or building up my own rage levels again.
Correct. Peace, calm. We see on the screen rising anger levels.
Hit the button for potassium.
Completely out of context. So, okay, and he also asks, bag space is limited. What foods will you survive off of in a zombie apocalypse?
Well, as I've mentioned on the blog, I'm vegetarian. So I've got it a little bit easier than most,
Mm-hmm.
I think, because
You can just eat other people's lawns.
Yeah.
You can graze.
I guess,
Yeah. At the same time, to have a balanced vegetarian diet, it does take. It's not a. Okay, let me back up. It's not possible to have a well-balanced vegetarian diet if you do not have some level of civilization. Because I need some supplements like vitamin B12, for example, and omega-3s, which I'm not going to get very easily if there is not the societal structure to generate pills or enhanced food supplements.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that might affect me a little bit.
Okay.
But otherwise, for zombie apocalypse, it's going to have to be things that are durable, that transport easily. Canned foods are actually not going to be a good idea because the weight is going to slow me down.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll probably have to just try to get some basic ingredients, some flour, some sugar, and do a little bit of cooking on my own. Hopefully get a garden started somewhere that hasn't been affected by the eventual nuclear fallout when the government turns to its last option.
Yep. Yep. That's a good point. Okay.
We have some B12 downstairs.
We do. Maybe we should just stock up on that.
Yeah. Well, get some extra because I'm heading your way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I know,
I'm
that's
checking
exactly
you for
why.
covert bandages, mister.
All right. And then Anonymous, I don't even know if you want to answer this, but I'm going to ask it. We'll see. Anonymous asks, boxers or briefs?
Would you believe? I think that's the second time that's actually been asked on the blog already.
Commando.
I'm pretty.
I'm swinging. Yeah.
Yeah. See, they didn't ask on the job or off the job.
Oh.
Pants are optional.
That's right.
Oh ho. No pants Friday.
Yeah.
But no, brief.
Okay. Fair enough. All right.
I mean, we don't do video on this show yet, so clothes are optional.
Let's not. Say we didn't.
Okay. Like getting
Focus.
naked and biting people. I mean, that's been a theme lately with zombies.
That is true,
Yeah.
especially in Miami. And you were in Florida recently.
Oh.
Oh, interesting. Okay, so the Medical Chronicles asked if you were on an admissions committee and you recognized one of the applicants from Tumblr or internet, would it affect your decision? And do you think the internet is already playing or will be playing a role in such types of decisions?
I'll answer the second part first. Absolutely, it is.
Yep.
I mean, you hear about this all the time, not just from medical school, but job applications and scholarships. People researching your Facebook account. There's even been, I don't remember the details, but wasn't there somebody who was like being told, unless you give us your Facebook account and password, we're not going to hire you or accept or something?
Yep.
So yes, it's definitely out there, and this is why I've written posts about this. You have to protect your reputation both in real life and online if you have any plans of going into healthcare, because it's all going to come back to bite you later, and it's not just going to bite you in the brain; it's going to bite you elsewhere. But as for if it would affect my decision, well, of course it would. If I've got extra information on somebody, and I know that this is the person who writes the Medical Chronicles blog. Well, it'll affect my decision. Will it be for good or for bad? Hey, that's up to what kind of behavior I've seen you have. But I got to say, for most of the blogs that I follow myself on Tumblr, you've got a +5 bonus already for getting admitted into anything I have control over, because there's some really good bloggers out there.
Sweet, +5 bonus points. I dig it. That's awesome. So this next one, I think I could probably answer it. It's more a biological question, but Anonymous asks, is it possible for someone to make a cure based on someone's blood? Like if one has an immunity to a certain illness, can we use someone's blood to make an antidote based off of that? I see that in movies a lot, but I am not sure that it can be done in real life, and it's for something I am writing. By the way, love your blog, Dr. Cranquis.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's how a lot of initial vaccines were made, and how feasible it would be in real life. It depends on how much money you have and what kind of technology you can get your hands on. Because it's not the kind of thing you're going to just whip up using a piece of bamboo and a coconut shell on Lost or anything. But yeah, no, it's very doable.
Yep.
The whole field of immunology really is figuring out, okay, so what's in the bloodstream? What do we want to pass on to somebody else? What don't we want to pass on?
Yep. And if you want to look up antibodies, that'll help you in your writing process, because antibodies are in your blood, and they help your body recognize bad guys. So, okay. MD Admissions asks, and I think this is our last question that we'll be able to answer with the time that we have.
Okay.
So this is a question for Cranquis. I am wondering, what is the most zombie-like case that has ever walked into your urgent care, and how did you react?
Ooh. The first case that comes to mind wasn't in my urgent care, actually, but I'm going to go with that.
Okay.
Actually, in residency, we had a man come into the emergency room, be brought in by family, and family did not know the man's history. He apparently had been living on the streets, and then they had found him, and he was essentially delirious and incredibly malnourished and dehydrated. So they didn't know anything about the guy, and they just brought him in. So I was called to the emergency room from the medicine service to say, well, admit this guy. We don't really know what all's going on with him, but he obviously needs a workup. And the guy, I mean, he was in his 60s and just, 75 pounds, just scrawny, every bone in his body showing. And so I started examining him, and anytime that I would touch him, he would just open his mouth and start gnashing his teeth.
Whoa.
And it was creepy. And then as I'm looking at his teeth, I mean, he's got the bad dentition you would expect from somebody who's been living on the street for years, but he had this horrible case of fungus in the mouth, this thrush.
Oh, no.
So it's the worst smell. So already just the gnashing teeth and the smell makes me think of a zombie. But then as I start examining him more, he's got like these weird marks and scratches and and scabs, and it was some of the worst skin stuff I'd ever seen. Long story short, what the guy had that nobody had realized was advanced HIV and AIDS. And so, I mean, he
Oh.
died 2 days later. Just
Oh,
massive,
wow.
overwhelming fungal infection.
Yeah.
But I had never seen somebody in advanced AIDS like that before, and it was incredible, just the way that it wreaked havoc on the body to have no immune system, and just
Yeah.
everything attached to this guy, anything he'd been exposed to was on him and in
Yeah.
him.
Oh,
It was
jeez.
incredible. So, that's what comes to mind when you think about, the fake gore and bizarre skin appearance to zombies you see on TV.
Mm-hmm.
There are real life diseases which can reduce you to that, not necessarily as fast, but yeah, there's some incredibly wild stuff out there.
Sure. And now, after these silly questions, we have our 2 actual ZombieTech questions that we always ask.
Well, he's already answered.
He's already
them.
answered them, I know, but I want to see if he changes his mind. Right? All right.
All right.
And I don't know if we asked the book. Did we ask the book one? Did we ask you the book one?
I don't remember a book one.
See? I don't think I remember a book one. Okay. All right. So 3 tools you would bring to the zombie apocalypse.
Okay. I would bring, and I remember last time I told you guys I would bring an MRI if we could fit one in there.
Yes.
We got all into discussing railgun launchers.
Yes.
But if I've got to give different answers, I would say I would bring a full set of skin instruments, so
Ooh.
suturing material, scalpels, needles, and along with that, I'd bring a large assortment of anesthetics.
Yep.
Because there's just something about the zombie apocalypse. People are getting their skin hurt all the time.
Yep.
You're climbing through who knows what kind of destructed buildings. And this is not just getting bitten by things. I mean, you're gonna get yourself cut up all the time. So skin wounds are gonna be huge.
Right.
And then along with those 2 items, maybe a urinary catheter. Just think about it, all right? So you're on the run.
True.
Especially if you gotta get your way through like a major city, you're on a scavenger hunt to pick up supplies.
You don't want to have to stop to pee.
Nobody ever stops to pee.
Right. And the people who do die almost immediately. Right.
Exactly. So yeah,
That
you gotta be able
is-
to just, keep their bodily wastes managed for a while.
That is pretty darn hardcore, Dr. Cranky.
So the catheter, instead of just going crazy NASA lady style and wearing a diaper.
Yeah.
Seems like the diaper's a little easier.
I don't know.
Yeah,
No, that's just gross.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, she's had something going on. Yeah.
Mild case of zombie-itis, maybe.
Yeah. So, we are actually out of time. And
you wanted to ask him about a book.
Oh,
now that you've
crap.
ruined our time
Yes.
here.
Book. What book would you bring to the zombie apocalypse bunker?
I would probably bring along a nice, huge collection of just something totally non-zombie related to take my mind off of everything. If I had to grab something that I currently owned, it would be a collection of short stories, probably either by Orson Scott Card, Ray Bradbury, or Isaac Asimov.
Approved.
Yeah.
Approved.
Nice laid-back reading.
Ender's Game is the best.
Oh man, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Cool.
So entertainment as you watch the world burn.
That's right.
All right. So thank you for joining us this week. Before we get going here, where can people find your blog?
The blog is located on Tumblr. The address is spelled Cranquis. That's CRANQUIS .tumblr TUMBLR.com.
Cool.
All righty. And if you're into any of this sort of medical stuff, and even if you're just a regular Joe like me who may not be a professional but is interested, I'm sure all the material up there is appropriate.
Yep.
And that's it for us this week. We're over time. We're past the mark at this point. So we're going to get out of here. You guys can find us every week at ZombieTech.tv. We put up our shows Thursday evenings usually. So if you're putting it on your phone, you can pretty much be guaranteed you'll have something to listen to on the way to work Friday morning.
Cool.
All right. We'll see you guys next week.
Bye.
Bye.
Later.